Hey everyone, it's Amy Register here. Happy Friday, happy almost Sabbath to my Seventh Day Adventist homies. I work as a Bible worker at Sunnyvale Seventh Day Adventist Church. So there's my upfront. And I've gotten several questions lately about salvation and the gospel. And so I want to respond to Cherie, but also to a couple other people in this response. So Cherie asks, why is the gospel so boring to her? Don't worry, Cherie. People who have been in the church and heard the message over and over again the same way, we can get tired of it. It doesn't work on our hearts the way it used to sometimes. So I don't think that's the point. I don't think that's the problem. I think that the way many Christians teach the gospel is lacking in fullness. And so that's what I want to respond to today. I think the way that we are explaining the good news or the gospel is really just a tiny part of what reality is. So the gospel, you're going to think this is blasphemous. The gospel is not about your personal salvation. Again, the gospel is not about your or my personal salvation. And stay with me. I promise we will suss this out. So, most people, I think, watching this, whether you're Christian or not, Seventh day Adventist, whatever, have more or less heard the following story their whole lives. It is this: Jesus came to earth and died for our sins so that his perfect life would be a substitute of our imperfect one, which would help us be able to attain heaven, attain a place in this perfect world somewhere far, far away. It's beautiful. It's satisfying on some level, but I don't believe that that's the fullness of what the gospel is and what Jesus taught about the gospel. It does a disservice to his message because if you read, starting with the book of Matthew, what Jesus was actually teaching, you'll read one phrase over and over again, and that phrase is the gospel of the kingdom. It's not just the good news, it is the good news. That's what gospel means. The gospel of the kingdom. In Matthew 4, when Jesus is starting his ministry, those are some of the first things the author describes about him. It says, he was going through all of Galilee, teaching in the synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every sickness among the people. So the gospel, or the good news, is about the kingdom, God's kingdom and kingdom principles coming to rule and bless this earth. It's a different message than the message of you being saved. It's a much bigger message. So let's kind of tease it out. It's not just about one person being rescued from their own bad actions or even the chaos of the planet. Jesus' message is, bigger than that. Like I said, so getting this right, especially for this generation, I think your older folks, 40s and above, will respond to that original salvation. You getting out of this world is a message that resonates with, I think, some of my older Bible studies. But anybody 40 and younger has kind of like an I don't care attitude to it. And after talking to several people, I figured out why. And getting this right is a matter of whether or not someone might choose to check out Christianity and to follow Jesus, because there are many people in my generation and younger who think that not only is this message pretty unappealing and unmotivating, but if it were to be true that all God was doing was rescuing certain people out of sin or chaos, that God would be irresponsible. It's like, hey, what about the rest of the world? What about the people who, who might not understand you personally, Jesus? So this is why I'm making this video. I want to speak to our generation, and I want to help our Bible workers and our pastors and our evangelists speak to this generation, because saying that the good news is like being rescued, it's like giving one person a life vest as the rest of their friends and family get swallowed up by floodwaters. It's just so unappealing to this generation. So the cool thing is that these younger people are truly worried about the state of affairs for all of humanity. They're not just worried about what happens to them at the end, although they have that question too. So, this gospel of the kingdom is what I believe our generation really needs to hear. And what is it? How do we explain it? In short, it's the good news that Jesus came to set up a very different kingdom than anything else that we see in existence today. All the systems of man that we see, whether it's a country, a corporation, a regime, or even a church, I will say, um, is either set up on the backs of people who are at a disadvantage, people who give and toil and whatever for the system, only to become taken advantage of later. So even if it starts off with the best ideals, they may still be taken advantage of later. And some of you have lived that. And so you know how unappealing the kingdoms of this earth are. And so instead of those current systems, Jesus says that his example and his power are come to earth to usher in this new kingdom where every wrong is made right and where the operating principle is completely other centered love. And people respond to that. People respond to that. And the better news that we can actually choose to become citizens of this kingdom now, even before Jesus comes back to rule in fullness. And that is good news to many people who want to know, what about now? What about my neighbors now? What about people, that I live with or live next to or run into at 7-Eleven? That message that we can choose to act as citizens even before kingdom has come in its fullness is really appealing. That's the gospel of the kingdom that Jesus preached. And while our personal salvation ends up being part of that, every wrong made right, reconciled to God, and that we get to live in this kingdom because he's made us holy. Yeah, that's part of it, but it is just part of it. And so preach the bigger story. Preach the whole different kingdom values. It's bigger, it's more beautiful. Preach it and live it and win souls with it. That's all for today. If you want to add to this, I'd love to see your commentary. And if you want to chat me or have a Bible study, you can reach me by email at askachristianfriend@gmail.com. That's it for now. Happy Friday. Happy Sabbath. See you later.